Have you ever seen a single image that just tells you everything you need to know about a country's priorities? Sometimes a picture isn't just worth 1,000 words, it's worth billions and billions of dollars. Let's dig in and see what this one tells us.
So this image of a stalled project out in California, it kind of went viral. But as Dr. Sofia Alvarez points out, it's a sign of something way bigger than just some funding argument. It's really a window into how the world's biggest economy decides what's actually worth building and, well, what gets left in the dust.
All right, so what exactly happened here? Let's break down the key moments that led to the federal government pulling its funding for California's high-speed rail project. Now, we're not talking about a little budget cut here. In July of 2025, the Federal Railroad Administration just pulled the plug on nearly $4 billion. The official reason? Well, after a massive 315-page review, they basically said the project had no realistic way to meet the timeline it had agreed to. And things happened fast after that. A month after the big cancellation, the last little bit, $175 million, was pulled back too. By December, California, well, they ended up dropping their lawsuit, pretty much saying, you know what, we can't count on the federal government as a reliable partner anymore. And that left this huge, ambitious project totally scrambling.
Okay, but here's the thing. This decision, it wasn't made in a bubble. It's actually a peek into a much, much bigger story about America's national priorities and how it chooses to spend its money. So the official line from the administration was that this $4 billion cut was all about being responsible with money. But when you put it next to the other numbers, a totally different picture starts to emerge. This wasn't just about accounting. It was a huge political signal about what matters and what doesn't. I mean, just look at this. The difference in scale is just staggering. That $4 billion cut for the train, it's practically invisible next to the proposed $1.5 trillion. That's $1,500 billion for national security. This visual gets right to the heart of the whole debate. And believe me, this isn't a one-time thing. When you add up everything that goes into national security, veterans affairs, intelligence, the works, the real annual spending is already over $1.4 trillion. More than $8 trillion has been spent on the wars after 9/11. And get this, the very same budget proposal that's boosting defense is also cutting $15 billion from a bipartisan infrastructure law. So you start to see the pattern, right? Military projects get the green light, while civilian ones have to fight for whatever is left over. So what's really going on here? You might think it's just politics, but the real story, it goes a lot deeper. It's about a basic tension in how governments themselves are set up to work.
Yeah, it's really tempting to just rate this off as partisan politics, right? You've got a Republican administration cutting money for a big project in a Democratic state. But the sources we're looking at say that's actually missing the bigger picture. The real problem here is built into the system.
And that brings us to this really key idea called the infrastructure trap. It's a problem that pretty much every government on Earth has to deal with. Think about it. These huge nation-building projects. We're talking high-speed rail, new energy grids, modern ports. They're super vulnerable. Why? Because you might not see the benefits for decades, long after the politicians who approved them are gone. And that makes these projects easy targets to cut for a quick, short-term political win. And what went down in California isn't just some local US story. It actually offers a really important playbook for emerging economies all over the world, especially in places across Africa that are building their own foundational infrastructure as we speak.
So what did California do? Well, they couldn't win in court. They were pretty much forced to pivot, and fast. First, they had to just accept the federal money was gone. Then, they locked in their own dedicated funding, about $1 billion a year from the state's cap-and-trade program. And finally, they started looking overseas for private investors. And this is where the real lesson is for everyone else. Instead of having to react like that, the playbook is to be proactive. To protect these massive projects from changing political winds, you've got to build a kind of armor around them. That means you anchor them in dedicated, protected funds, not just lines in a budget. And you use complex financing that can survive even when one government or partner decides to back out. And that brings us to the last and maybe the most critical piece of this whole story: credibility. Because it turns out, politics wasn't the only thing that threw this project off the rails. Just let this number sink in for a minute: 0. After 16 years and something like $15 billion spent, not one single mile of high-speed track was actually put down. And that massive failure to deliver, well, it gave the politicians the perfect opening they needed to just pull the plug. And this quote from Dr. Alvarez just nails it. Execution credibility is not a soft metric. What she means is, when these massive projects miss their deadlines and their budgets just explode, they do more than just waste money. They absolutely shred the trust, the credibility you need to get anyone else, public or private, to invest in the future. You basically poison the well for the next big idea.
So it all comes down to this one big question. The desire to build big, amazing, transformative things, that's universal. Every country has that ambition. But what the story of California's train really shows us is that ambition alone isn't nearly enough. The crucial question we should all be asking is that ambition protected? Not just from the whims of politics, but from its own failures to get the job done.